Welcome to our Corporate Experiences STEM series. We started this program during 2020 in the peak of COVID. And so we've been doing virtual field trips. So today is our first ever in-person field trip right here at Nuro with Wilcox High School. So thank you all for being here. My name is Dee Dee Engel, and I'm your co-host from Wender Weiss Foundation for Children. And I'm very excited to be here today with Nuro to bring you this event. We are also excited to be here with automotive technology students and teachers from Wilcox High School. I'm going to give you a quick sneak peek of the agenda. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to my co-host, the head of City and Community Engagement for Nuro, Mr. Dan Mitchell.
Thanks, Dee Dee. We are very, very excited to have you all here today. We've grown to more than over 1,000 employees. Our two founders there on the bottom left worked at the Google self-driving car project at the time, now known as Waymo. They left that company to start Nuro, and they started in, again, a small Airbnb working side by side with 4 or 5 other people. And just in that 5.5 years, right here in Silicon Valley, we've now grown to that over 1,300 employees with over $2 billion raised to help fund this mission and our work on autonomous vehicles. We've launched partnerships with Kroger. They're one of the nation's largest grocery store chains. So a lot of the leading companies that are offering delivery services are partnering with Nuro. We received an exemption from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration at the start of 2020 for our R2, our second generation robot vehicle. In 2021, we actually just announced a new manufacturing facility in Nevada that we're working on building from the ground up. We have testing operations now happening in Los Angeles as well. So why are we building autonomous vehicles, and why are we focused on delivery services with autonomous vehicles? If you look at the percent of the trips that Americans take today, or at least in 2017 when this data was collected, a huge percent of the trips and the use case for people outside of their home utilizing their cars are actually for shopping and errands. It's not to take you to work, though that maybe in the future or to school, what you all are doing. There's actually a 43% of trips that are just for shopping and errands. So there's a huge business here if we're able to replace those types of trips with our autonomous vehicle for delivery services. You'll see a lot, and I'm happy to answer a lot of questions about robo-taxis or autonomous vehicles to transport people. But our founders really in that Airbnb had that insight that delivery services actually might be the first true application of autonomous technology. And there's a huge market for it. This is a business that could make a lot of money one day. But it's not just about the money. If you look at the way that those current shopping, errands, and deliveries happen today, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable because we see a huge number of traffic collisions on the roadway today. You look at the size of the Nuro vehicle, it's much smaller. It's something where, if there is a collision, this vehicle is built to protect folks outside of the vehicle rather than anything inside the vehicle. We're also seeing that the way we get deliveries happen today, or the way we do shopping and errands, is not sustainable because of the environmental damage. Not everyone can make the switch yet to electric vehicles, but they could replace trips that they currently do in internal combustion engine vehicles with electric delivery vehicles, and that can help the environment. Let me talk a little bit more about what Nuro's second generation vehicle looks like. Again, as you've seen, it's a little bit smaller than a traditional vehicle. And again, that narrow width leaves more space for bicyclists, pedestrians, other roadway users, making it safer for everyone in the community. The front of the vehicle is made of a lighter material. It's not an engine block like you all see on a regular basis on some of the vehicles that you're working on. That means it's a place that is designed to absorb energy if there ever is an impact. In fact, on our third generation vehicle, we're working on an external airbag. airbag that will pop up if they detect a collision is imminent to protect a vulnerable road user that's out there. Again, we're seeing that trend in fatalities of vulnerable road users, the cyclists and the pedestrians, grow, and we really want to work to reduce that trend. With the camera placement around the vehicle, you can see it gets a 360-degree view. There's no blind spots. It's always on and paying attention. And lastly, when we get a chance to look closer at the vehicle, you'll see that the curbside doors are only on that one side of the vehicle. That's again to protect our customers who are going out who don't have to go out into the street to receive their items, but also the cyclists who are worried about dooring incidents or someone opening the door into the roadway, where we've seen actually a number of bicycle fatalities because of that. With the doors only on the curb side, we are able to deliver that safer experience. We'll also talk a little bit in a few minutes about the overlapping camera systems we have, the thermal imaging camera. I know one of you asked about whether the thermal cameras on the vehicle. We'll see some of that, and we'll talk to some of the employees at Nuro about what that looks like. We have a LiDAR on top of the vehicle, and actually on this vehicle over here, you can see there are 4 smaller short-range LiDARs on the sides of the vehicle as well. We have ultrasonic sensors. We have a microphone. We have also automotive-grade lighting and signals, and the touchscreen for law enforcement as well as customer interaction. So it's something that this vehicle is really built for safety. It's also classified as a low-speed vehicle. Does anyone know what a low-speed vehicle classification is? Anyone familiar with that? A low-speed vehicle is a vehicle with a top speed of 25 miles per hour. It was built into the vehicle manufacturing regulatory scheme to allow golf carts on public roads. So a golf cart or electric vehicle with a top speed of 25 miles per hour. The Nuro vehicle, because there's no seat belts, there's no internal airbag, there's no brake pedal. We built this vehicle to fit with that lower speed vehicle classification where we aren't required to have that yet. And then work with the national government to work on updating the regulations to allow for a faster, fully autonomous or zero occupant vehicle. And that's something that we'll continue to work on today. As I mentioned, Nuro was the first and so far the only autonomous vehicle to receive an exemption from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to be on public roads with zero occupants built from the ground up. You'll see in a few minutes when we go through our tour of the facility the different types of vehicles we have. So we start with our autonomous support vehicles. We utilize the Toyota Prius platform to build out our autonomous support vehicles. These vehicles are capable of regular driving as well as autonomous driving, depending on which systems are active at the time. So what Nuro does before we go and drive in an area is we send out these Prius vehicles with someone behind the wheel driving the car, just like you hopefully will be doing soon, throughout the community to map the neighborhoods. Again, similar to what we've all seen Google Maps or other mapping services doing for the last 5 or 10 years. So again, this is someone driving a route as the vehicle maps its surrounding area. We then utilize that mapping data to build a virtual world where our vehicles can understand all the elements of the bike lanes, the driving lanes, where the street signs are located, so it can really detect everything that it knows needs to be around the world, as well as where that school zone starts and where they need to slow down, or where the curb is as they're making the right-hand turn. And so that map data is really important to our autonomous driving. We then go ahead and validate that map data with autonomous driving in these Prius vehicles with safety operators behind the wheel. You'll hear from some of the employees who serve in these roles or had previously served in those roles and have moved on to other roles at Nuro and other careers. This is really where we test the software that our software engineers have built to make sure the vehicle is driving as expected. It make sure it gives enough space to the pedestrian or the cyclist on the road. Make sure it stops at the right location at a stop sign and yields the right of way if it needs to. If there's any issues as the Prius vehicles are driving around, that safety operator is trained inside the vehicle to take over as needed. And so a lot of the autonomous vehicle companies utilize this platform and process to go through and test their software before it's fully deployed in the road. As I was talking about that digital mapping, I wanted to show you this slide where you can see actually what that digital map looks like. There's a lot of information on our website, a lot more detailed software that we can get more in-depth into on the tour, or we can follow up with questions afterwards. But this is an example of what the vehicle is seeing live and how it's predicting what's going to happen. Let me come over here and show you some of the things. So the circles that are around the vehicle is an output from our LiDAR sensors. So that is sending, again, a laser out into the world and getting a return based on where there are objects in the world. So you can see immediately around the vehicle, those are pretty concentric circles where there's no real objects in front of it. As you get further away, like over here on the left side, it looks like there's some trees over there, and so those light signals are coming back and detecting that there's a tree there. In the top left up there, you can see it looks like there's a building over there that the LiDAR is bouncing off of. And then you can see there are a couple of vehicles as well. Those boxes around the vehicles is not something the LiDAR detects. The LiDAR detection is processed through our onboard compute system, and our onboard compute system actually builds that, what we call a bounding box around the vehicle to identify it that it is a vehicle that's moving. And so that is a place that we do not want to go, but that's something that's processed through the computer system once it gets the LiDAR inputs or other inputs. You can see down here, it looks like there's a pedestrian. And you can even see with the pedestrian, there's a small arrow or a red line coming out of it. Again, that's not something that our sensing compute or system picks up, but what happens is the sensing system is processed by our computer system and then predicts where the vehicle or person is going. And so you can see that output there. You also can see that orange line coming from the orange bounding box car. That's an oncoming car, and the computer system is actually trying to predict at this time what that vehicle is going to do. So you can see there are kind of three main lines coming out of that core orange line there, where the vehicle, once it gets to the four-way stop sign, it can make a right turn, it can make a left turn, or it can go straight ahead. And that's a really, really key process of the autonomous vehicle development. If there was no one else on the roads, our vehicles could drive probably, fantastic 100% of the time. And for some companies, some of the early testing happens at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning where there is no one else on the road, so you don't have to predict what other objects are doing. But once you put in other people and other unpredictable objects, it becomes much more complex to figure out where the vehicle needs to go. So once we map an area, we sense where the people are, where the objects are. We also need to predict and plan on where we need to go. And so this is an example of some of that processing that happens on the vehicle in real time so it can predict and plan where it needs to go. Nuro now has nationwide offices. I've mentioned a couple of these places already. Our headquarters is in Mountain View, California, but there's nationwide offices, and we have employees in all of these locations around the country. The last thing I'll leave us with here as part of this presentation is this technology, it's going to take time. And I'll take a couple of minutes to walk us through kind of what happened in the aviation industry with technology. We've seen now a lot of eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that are now being developed as well. So even that aviation technology is continuing to progress throughout this time. Similar to now looking at the autonomous vehicle industry, you can see one of the first vehicles there on the left, the one with the GM logo on it. That vehicle's name is Boss, and that was the winner of the 2007 DARPA Urban Challenge. The Defense Department put out $1 million prize for any university or corporate group to build a vehicle that can navigate city streets in an urban environment autonomously. One of our founders, Dave Ferguson, was a student at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh at the time, and he served on the team that helped build that vehicle and won the $1 million prize for that competition. So that was one of the earliest autonomous vehicles that were developed, and that was all funded through the US government and the department there. You can also see in that photo, the second photo there, one of the early Google cars. Again, this is where our founders got their start in the autonomous vehicle industry when they were in college and at their university programs. We're now seeing a lot of these early use cases. Has anyone seen one of those sidewalk robots driving around? Has anyone seen those driving around? Some of the college campuses, as you hopefully get a chance to visit, or even in the city of Mountain View, some of these sidewalk robots are driving around some of the city streets doing deliveries, again, utilizing the sidewalk. We have the Nuro vehicle doing on-road autonomous deliveries. And then you see here as well, Waymo, one of the other autonomous vehicle companies, has a Chrysler Pacifica minivan that they've retrofitted. And they are today offering rides to the members of the public with no driver in the vehicle. You can get in a car, there is no one in the driver's seat, the steering wheel will move, and just like a Lyft or Uber, it will take you where you want to go in Chandler, Arizona area. It's a really, really cool technology that they're applying to passenger transportation. We're also seeing some of the companies work on trucks. It can be very expensive as well as a really tough job to do the work in the trucking industry. And so there's a huge opportunity there if you can get the technology right for the trucks to become autonomous and travel on our highways. Then you look at some things that are still in design or coming in the near future. One of the last emails here is a design by Mercedes-Benz looking at what a future vehicle could look like, where it looks like there's a bed in there, maybe some TV screens, some gaming systems. Looks pretty cool to me. I can't wait for that. But it's something that, again, is going to take time, just like we saw in the aviation industry. Anyway, Prius vehicle you can buy at a dealership today. What type of sensing systems do you think exist in that type of vehicle?
What makes it so that you hear the car beeping when you're getting into a parking spot? Yes? Anybody? Ultrasonic sensors. They're the little dots you see on the bumpers.
So those are sensor systems that already exist on the vehicle, but the Toyota Prius doesn't have any LiDAR on it. It does have a camera system on it, so you can see behind you as well as some stuff forward, but it's not a 360-degree camera system on it. There's some radar, but not enough, and so we've added on more radar. To do all of that, we actually have to rip out most of the insides of the Prius vehicle and rebuild it with all the wiring systems and all that stuff. And so that's something you can see in the vehicle. There you can see the dashboard is fully out, as well as in the back on the bumpers, on the trunk there. You can see all of that stuff that's happening right now. That's before we even put our sensor systems on top, the LiDAR system and the other things on top of the vehicle.
One of the things that happens in this first bay here is after everything's disassembled, they start to build out the internal structure that Nuro has built so that we can bolt down our supporting equipment, all of our hardware that actually processes the data, and it's bolted down in place, and it stays in a spot that we can actually force air to cool the systems. Nuro feels that it's important so that we keep all of our vehicles looking very similar. So we try to buy all of our cars in white, so it's not as much of an attention getter as that. But we wrap all our vehicles and we brand all of our vehicles so that you can see that it is a Nuro vehicle in the neighborhood doing testing, and we're not trying to surprise anybody. As you saw in the back over there, where there's a Nuro branded P2.
So the blue car over there just hasn't gotten that wrap done yet.
Exactly, exactly.
And we do all of that in-house.
We do all of that in-house in the very room you were just in.
Has anyone seen like cool decals on cars and stuff like that as well? That's something that we do, and that's someone's job here at Nuro is to help us get all the decals.
Yeah, they do all the wrapping, they do all the vinyl cutting, they do all the design. Our ID team is very particular about colors, so when you go back in the other room, you'll see that there's different numbers on different panels because they want to see how different colors look, and how it looks inside is completely different than how it looks outside in the sun. Yeah. Towards the end of the trip, we'll actually see a P2, which we call the Prius version 2, almost complete, and it looks really great. Awesome. Over here to the right, you can see one that's in the build process right now. It's mostly complete with components in the trunk, and it also has, you can see all of the sensors here before we pretty it up and put covers on things. So what we have here is a short range LiDAR, and obviously it's looking down at the curb and it's looking down at parked cars. And then up top we have a 64 beam long range Hasi LiDAR, and that's looking long range. It's looking for people on the sidewalk that might be going between two cars and surprise popping out between two cars onto the street. And we don't have it here, but we'll have short range radars here. We've got a short range LiDAR here, and we also have cameras up around this black ring, and underneath each of these LiDARs, there's another camera.
I know we, again, got a couple questions about the thermal imaging camera previously.
Yeah.
We have that up there at the top, right?
Yep, right here. If you guys can see, there's 3 thermal cameras up front.
Why is that just facing forward, not other directions?
Because the vehicle is going forward and we want to see if there's any warm bodies in front of us.
That's the most important or critical kind
Yeah,
of location.
exactly. Any questions? Anything you want to talk about the wiring, any of the connectors, or anything, how any of this stuff is put together? All right, cool. Let's go over here to...
Are they industry or something that you're producing?
we use industry standard connectors for pretty much everything. And obviously different connectors go together different ways. Coaxial connectors go different than your standard copper wire, so on and so forth. Awesome.
Okay, well, let's keep going here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and check out our R3. This is our latest baby. These are the only 3 R3s that we've seen so far. These are our first robots that we are tearing down to see if they're completely built the way that we want to build them, that all the nuts and bolts are torqued to the right spec. And they have everything on our R3 robot is paralleled by our P2 Prius, so that all our sensors are the same, they work the same, they're connected the same way.
On here, right, we have the back, we have a brake light system on there. We have a little bit of the wiring, the internal coolant, but everything is built into the vehicle system from the ground up. It's not retrofitted and has to go through this process. We're working on kind of that plan from the ground up, which makes it much more cost effective to put these vehicles on the road. Because as we were talking about for why Nuro is working on all of these things, it's to drive down that cost. So this is all accessible and can be done on a regular delivery service. So having our own vehicle systems here means we don't have to buy other cars to retrofit, to build in here, and you can have all the wiring done from the ground up, not done based on kind of around a driver's seat or around the other things that are in the vehicles.
This is our senior prototype engineer, Luke. Did I get the title right? Sure. Luke kind of heads up the team over here that's looking at how everything comes from our partner, BYD. And
Luke,
tell us what you do,
want to
Luke.
come over actually for a minute or two and just, how long have you been at Nuro?
About 6 years now.
6 years now, okay, so basically from the very beginning.
Yep.
Can you talk about what you're doing maybe before Nuro as well?
Yeah, so for like 15 years I had my own motorsports fabrication shop and we built cars for GM and competed in Formula Drift and Global Time Attack. And Nuro reached out to me one day and asked if we wanted to build roof racks. for a Nissan Leaf, and I thought, why would we want to do that? But after some research, I found out some autonomous car stuff. It's really fascinating the way it's going to change the world, and got involved and got an offer from Nuro, and here I am.
Yeah, and so that roof rack you're talking about, that's like the thing on top of the Prius vehicles now that has the sensor system on it.
The sensor arch.
That holds all the LiDAR and radar and everything.
Very cool. So that's something we had to design in-house or build.
Yep. And if we can get Kayla over here.
Oh.
Hi, Kayla.
Kayla's a mechanical engineer, and she's heading up the R3 inspections, so.
What? Well, I guess you're going to join us as well later on the panel to help answer some questions for us too.
Yes.
But yeah, what do you do? What are you doing today, or what's your job? What's your job today at Nuro?
So I'm the main technician for the R3s right now. I've been here for about 4 months. I just graduated, but we're just working on.
Where did you graduate from?
UC Davis.
Okay.
Yes. And so we're just tearing down the bots, checking, inspecting, making sure everything's good to go.
So you can see the door open on this one. Again, these are our 3rd generation vehicles. They're a little bit bigger than our 2nd generation vehicles. As we're doing our pilots and commercial services, we're working with, again, Domino's Pizza, the grocery store, FedEx is another partner. They're all requesting more space in the vehicle. So what we thought 5 years ago was the right size of the vehicle, turns out after testing and practice and putting these on the roads with real customers, it turns out we wanted a little bit bigger. And so you can see this 3rd generation vehicle, it's still smaller than a Prius or a typical vehicle out on the roadway, but we have made it a little bit bigger to allow for more space for our commercial partners. That's something that's really important to do, not just testing the validation of the vehicle systems, but testing to make sure customers actually can access this vehicle and really utilize it. One of the things we learned when we did our first pilot was out on the roadway, our streets are actually a little sloped downward to allow like water and rain runoff from the middle of the roadway out to the curb and the sewer systems there. Well, when the vehicle pulls up alongside a curb, it means the vehicle kind of gets tilted along with the roadway to match that. When our door opened up then and the vehicle was slightly tilted, people could hit their head on the door as it opened up with our 1st generation vehicle. In fact, we had a New York Times reporter out to do a big story about Nuro. He hit his head twice on the door on the vehicle as that was happening. So one of the things we're doing, as you can see from this 3rd generation vehicle, the way the door opens up is a little bit different. And again, those are things that we learn throughout the process that we can then build into the next generation vehicles as it's doing this custom delivery service. Why do you think we have that Gulf Wing door rather than like a regular door that you might see? Yeah, sidewalks, cyclists. I think a lot of the safety, the space too, right?
Space.
So if the door was swinging outward, it would swing outward into the curb or out there. And so the space, even inside, when we're loading the vehicles or doing other things, it just takes up less space when the door opens up. And so right now, because we have that top speed cap of 25 miles per hour on our vehicles and the autonomous vehicles, we stick to the neighborhood roadways. Now, the state of California has laws, as do most states, that say if you have a low-speed vehicle that has a top speed of 25 miles per hour, you can go on 35-mile-an-hour roads at that speed of 25 miles per hour. You can legally try on the roads, but you can't go on roads faster than that. Texas allows you to go on roads 45 or 40 or 45 with that still low-speed vehicle at that speed of 25 miles an hour. We try to stay to the right lane, but it's not very common. There's actually a lot of the neighborhood roadway networks where we can get to where we need to go. It might take a little longer for us to do it, but it's safer for everyone in the community, and it allows us to do a real autonomous vehicle delivery service without going at those higher speeds yet, until we get those approvals to do that or have the vehicle systems that are capable of doing that. And so it takes a little longer, but the burrito, the groceries, the pizza, it doesn't mind a couple minutes wait where you and I might get impatient around that.
Sorry, there's no brake pedal, there's no steering wheel. These are completely autonomous. This is what we can do is we can connect a remote control to it and move it around that way.
So like if there was any type of emergency, you guys are able to take over with the remote control?
So the autonomous vehicle system is responsible for the full on-road driving of the vehicle. So there is not that
backup system that relies on a human to be that backup for that.
What would happen if like you guys did get into a crash? Like would you like have to like stay there or something?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I work on a regular basis. And so when I was doing that work and planning that out, I went to who deals with a lot of car accidents every day?
Police department.
The police department, that's right. So I went to the local police department. I was like, we're working on this. Here's what we think we can do when the vehicle encounters an accident. You know, here's a phone number to call, here's this. Do you think this works, right? You're the experts, you deal with this. And they actually provided a lot of feedback. We did a lot of trainings and work with the police department to figure out, okay, what's their type of response that they have normally for car crashes? If they see one of these vehicles, where do they find the insurance information, you know, the registration? If one of these vehicles does, you know, go through a stop sign and doesn't stop and they need to give it a ticket, how do they go about giving a ticket? That's all things we're working through with the police departments, and we found ways to make that work. One of the things that I learned actually in working with that is most of the tow trucking companies that we see out on the roadway today carry kitty litter in their vehicle. Does anyone know why they carry kitty litter? That's exactly right. You guys would have been better at dealing with this than me. But I learned about that from them and from the tow companies and stuff as we were talking about in the event of a crash, right? What happens? How does it get towed? What's going on? And now our fleet vehicles will also carry kitty litter in case there's a spill. Now, we don't have the oil, right, or the gasoline. We do have other coolant systems and stuff like that that do need to be cleaned up. But that's something great that we learned through this interaction with law enforcement as well as we're working on the development and deployment of these vehicles.
Over here, it's kind of interesting. From our partner, we were able to get some raw frames. This is just the raw chassis of the robot without the doors or any plastics, wheels, drivetrain, or anything. So that's pretty much what you would see as a naked R3. And if you guys want to take a look at it a little closer, you can.
So we'll take a look at this and we'll be wrapping up here in another minute or two. But this supply chain part is really, really, really important part of Nuro, because if any of our engineers need that missing screw or bolt or wire as they're building a vehicle and they don't have it, that delays our production. And we're seeing a lot of companies right now go through a supply chain issue where they don't have enough parts to build their vehicles. And so we have a lot of folks on our team that are working on supply chain, making sure we have enough of all the materials we need for our team to work. And so that's another career path where knowing what types of equipment you need or the team needs, you can be the person that goes and makes those deals and works on making sure we have enough inventory for the teams to work. So we're gonna go ahead and actually wrap up the tour here, and we're gonna head back and sit down.
You may not know anything about Anza College, but if you were to apply and enroll at Anza right out of high school, Anza College has something called the Anza Promise, which is your first 2 years of school is free. I just want to show you the two certificates that we offer. Students can take classes at Anza in both automotive technology and computer information systems and be prepared for a career in autonomous vehicles and specifically at Nuro. So there's these two, level 1, level 2, and Marcus here from Nuro, the way he explained it was the level 1 certificate would be for an employee coming in as an entry-level technician. So we all took a look at classes. The first in each of the two pathways, the first 3 are from automotive technology, and then the last 2 are in each group are from computer information systems. So I looked up the CIS courses just so you guys will know in planning for the future. The 2 CIS courses in each level are available every single quarter, and the majority of them are online, so you can kind of factor that into your schedule if you're interested in these. The 3 in auto tech in each level are available typically once a year, so you'd have to plan that out, with the exception of the automotive electrical systems. That course is offered every single quarter. So these were our effort to develop a partnership with Nuro so students can come in and take all of these classes, earn the 2 certificates, and help with internships and apply for jobs here at Nuro. And you can also use these certificates for the rest of your career. They are transferable. If there's other electric vehicle companies you're interested in, this would definitely be good to put on your resume. Anybody have any questions? The reason I asked how many of you are juniors, next year, if your schedule permits, you can actually take these classes while you're in high school. And I know right now you guys have a dual enrollment with Evergreen, but if your schedule permits it, you can take any of these classes in the evening. You'd be the lower priority to register, but they would still be free, and you would still earn college credit for them.
I want to talk a little bit more about Anza College, our automotive technology program. Sure, and I want to talk about kind of the history of cars, how we got to these autonomous vehicles, and how the content that we teach in our classes prepares people, technicians, for taking care of these vehicles when they need service out there in the automotive repair industry. So if you want to know more about Anza College, I think the best place to start is by visiting our Facebook page. This is just a little screen grab that I copied off of our Facebook homepage. It's got a lot of stuff in there about what we do. We have a big auto tech club. We do a lot of activities, and there's a lot of good information if you're curious about coming and joining us or taking classes at our college. So the reason I wanted to show you this photo from our Facebook page is I wanted to introduce you to our Dodge Dart up there. So that Dodge Dart was donated to our college in 1973, I believe, for educational purposes. It is now the Auto Tech Club drag racing cars. This is our Dart, at the drag strip. So in 1973, that's kind of my favorite generation of vehicles. Those were the muscle car eras. I started in the industry in my garage, probably the same age you guys were, building up a 1969 Chevy Chevelle. That's how I kind of learned how to do nuts and bolts when I first started. So that vehicle right there, it was kind of like the apex of a purely mechanical vehicle. Not a lot of wires on that thing other than headlights, wiper, starter motor. As far as acceleration and deceleration and turning, everything on there was purely mechanical. And as we start advancing through generations of automotive technology, we started to get electrified. We started to do more things. Cruise control, I think, was one of the first things. And a lot of people don't think about it like this, but I've always thought of the cruise control function, which has been on vehicles for a really long time. I think the first cruise control on vehicles was like in the early 1900s, 1920, something like that. But that is a form of semi-autonomous driving. I mean, if you think about it, you're driving down the road. Your foot's not on the gas pedal, but something on your car, whether it's mechanical or electric, it's taking care of the vehicle's acceleration. It's manipulating the throttle body. Your engine is revving up, revving down, without you actually stepping on the gas pedal at all. And as we start advancing through generations of automotive technology, we started to get electrified. We started to do more things. Cruise control, I think, was one of the first things. And a lot of people don't think about it like this, but I've always thought of the cruise control function, which has been on vehicles for a really long time. I think the first cruise control on vehicles was like in the early 1900s, 1920, something like that. But that is a form of semi-autonomous driving. I mean, if you think about it, you're driving down the road. Your foot's not on the gas pedal, but something on your car, whether it's mechanical or electric, it's taking care of the vehicle's acceleration. It's manipulating the throttle body. Your engine is revving up, revving down, without you actually stepping on the gas pedal at all. So that throttle control, that's evolved through the years too. We've gone from a throttle body that was actually a cable, so that when you stepped on the gas pedal, right, it used to be a cable, and it was your foot that moved, that pulled a cable and actually moved a throttle open and closed. These days, it's been replaced with a motor. So probably most of the cars that you're driving around right now, when you step on your gas pedal, all you're stepping on is a sensor. The sensor input goes into a computer, and the computer decides, do I want to open up the throttle? Do I want the engine to rev up and down? Then, anybody have any idea what this is over here? No? So a lot of cars don't have throttles. A lot of cars don't have engines anymore. There's probably half the cars out there in that parking lot, from what I saw, don't have internal combustion engines anymore. They're purely electric. So they're driven by some giant electrical motor like that, and all that throttle control is controlled by a computer that's just making that motor spin faster. Braking systems have kind of evolved the same way. Does this stuff look familiar to you? You got to say yes or no. I know you're lying. I know you guys are working on this stuff at school. So what do we have there? What's over here? Brake rotor, some pads, drum brakes. You guys practice repairing drum brakes at school? And how about in the middle? What's that in the middle? Is this the brake guy right here? I see you guys nudging him. I see you guys nudging him like that's your thing. So yeah, this is pretty basic, right? So we got a hydraulic system. We even saw brakes like that on the little robots outside. So you got a brake master cylinder. It's full of fluid. You step on it. You squeeze the fluid. And that pressure comes out here to your mechanical brakes and, you know, pushes some pads out. And those pads squeeze against the brake rotor. We got friction, and the car stops. About 40 years ago, which is a pretty long time, ABS got introduced onto vehicles. It became really common, like by late 80s, early 90s. I think most of the vehicles had anti-lock brakes. What do anti-lock brakes do? Huh? They shutter the brakes, yeah. So in their most basic form when they came out, it was there when you panic stopped. When you had to stop really fast, the problem was when you pound on that brake pedal, you'd apply so much pressure down there to those wheel brakes, your tires would lock up. And when your tires are locked up and you're not spinning, your car will start to slide. You'll actually lose traction. So at the beginning, it was there to just kind of pump the brakes for you. You all know how to do that, right? If you want to stop fast, you got to pump the brakes. And so that's what that ABS control module was there to do. It pumped the brakes for you so you could stop a little faster and you could actually turn while you were in a panic stop. As that ABS kind of evolved, they learned how to do a lot more things with it. And it's kind of neat because that ABS module, this little box that you see, it's been there, it's looked like that, it's been exactly the same for a really, really long time. The only thing that really has changed is the software behind it. So they've learned how to program the computers and get a lot more functions and features out of that exact same system there. So now that's integrated with traction control. And now that ABS module can also create its own pressure, and it can stop the vehicle all by itself if it wants to. So we've gone from just that pumping the brakes for you to a level of autonomy when it comes to the vehicle brake system. That car, what we've built so far, and these are components, like I said, that have been on vehicles for decades and decades and decades. And now we have the ability to accelerate the car and decelerate the car completely computer controlled. Steering systems, kind of the same thing happened with steering systems. It used to be gears. We went to a hydraulic assist where we had pressurized fluid that would help us move that steering rack back and forth. And now most vehicles are equipped with an electronic steering rack. The electronic racks, they're still there to provide driver assist, which means that you don't have to work as hard to move that steering wheel back and forth. But now, because there's wires connected to them, those wires can just go right to a computer, and that computer can actually decide. All it has to do, there's a little motor right there, and that motor, when it turns, when it spins, it's just screwing that rack back and forth. So the computer, if it wants to, it can just turn your car full left, full right, with no driver input. So we're accelerating remotely, we're braking the car remotely, and now we're steering the car remotely. The only thing missing to make our vehicles autonomous, and there are a lot of these vehicles out there on the road already, was some kind of sensing device so the car could detect its surroundings. So if you combine that electronic throttle body, if you combine that anti-lock brake, if you combine that electric steering with some kind of sensing element so that the car can see, now we are on our way to having something more like this, something more like the Nuro, where we have a vehicle that can navigate around town 100% without human input. There's a huge demand for mechanics right now, and it's going to grow a lot for people that can repair these kind of vehicles. Because like I said, this has been out, this has been kind of mainstream already. If you're working in a dealership right now, you see this stuff all the time, but it hasn't hit the aftermarket yet. So all the independent repair shops, there's not a lot of people that are actually willing to do this work, or unfortunately think that they can do this work. A lot of people are scared of dealing with autonomous systems. So this is a view from inside of our shop. We're doing some aiming procedure here during a Zoom class that I did last year. These targets, all these black and white targets, this is a nice snap-on kit that we purchased a couple years ago, and it's kind of a universal kit. So every car that's out there, except for like maybe a Tesla, that's out there on the road that has these cameras and radars that need to be aimed, everything you need to do all of those cars actually fits on that cart right there. So there's not a lot to it. The aiming is really important, but there's a huge misconception like in the industry that if you aim it off a little bit, that the car is going to drive itself off of a cliff, or the AI is going to take over and do something. Most of the time, the customer complaints, the symptoms that we experience on these vehicles are much milder than that. Sometimes it's just a matter of, my car is askew a little bit. Instead of being right in the middle of two lanes, it's off to the left or off to the right. So when we do our aiming, we do something called building the box. And this is really how simple it is to align most of these camera and radars that are out there in the industry today. It's all about just creating a squared off thing out in front of the car that's at a certain distance. And as long as you can measure it correctly, you can make sure that it's square and that your targets are in the correct place. All you really have to do is hit a button on the scan tool, tell the computer you're doing an aiming procedure, and it'll look at those black and white targets, and it'll just do the procedure, and that's all there is to it.
Straight out of high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and so I just avoided college, avoided four-year degrees, and went straight into retail. I worked retail for about 10 years before I needed some other change. So I started at Uber ATG in Pittsburgh as a vehicle operator, worked there for about a year and a half before moving out to California into another self-driving startup called Voyage. I started there as a vehicle operator as well, quickly worked up to an operations lead position that I worked at for the next about 2 years. After that, I was looking for a new direction, a new company, and came across Nuro in this fleet supervisor position. I knew I couldn't get away from AVs because it just gets to be a little addicting once you get into working with the technology and everything. And yeah, I can't get out of it now. So I oversee a team of fleet tech juniors. They are the ones out in the field making sure that these bots are operating and being maintained up to spec. So not only are we maintaining them back in the garage, but we are also deploying them out into the field. We're also troubleshooting and diagnosing out in the field if a problem were to arise, and are the ones to recover the bot at the end of the day and make sure that all of the data is uploaded for the engineering staff to dig into. I would say find some sort of entry-level position into the field that you're most drawn to. And just as long as you're a hard worker, you've got a good work ethic, that you're learning every single day, you can easily work your way up the ranks, especially in a startup. Things move a lot faster in a startup than they do at some of these bigger, well-known companies. And at startups, you can sometimes even create your own role whenever you see a gap in what is happening day to day, and you can kind of insert yourself into that gap and just have a brand new position at the company that you created. What I like about AVs versus retail is every day is different. No 2 days are the same. Everything's always changing. And also it's very hands-on. I'm a very hands-on person. I like to get my hands dirty with the bots, be out on the road, seeing these things driving around. And that's not something I can really do behind a cash register or folding t-shirts. We spend all of our days back at the depot making sure that these bots are well maintained, making sure that tire pressures are good, treads are good, make sure that all the computes and sensors are operating at the full standard, and sometimes tracking down bugs can be a little bit of a headache. But whenever we are actually out in the field watching these bots drive around on the public roads and starting to do deliveries to regular everyday people, it's what gets me out of bed every day, and it's what's super exciting about working on these robots, seeing them actually benefit the general public.
Coming out of high school, I really didn't know what to do. I went to community college because like I said, I didn't really know what to do. I wanted to kind of find out what exactly there is for me to do. But during college, I actually needed to go to work. And me looking for work, I worked in a bunch of different areas. I worked in fitness, I worked in sales, I did parking services too, and then I ended up here at Nuro. When I started at Nuro, I was just a contractor. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And once I started working here, I really fell in love with the culture that we have here at Nuro. Really fell in love with our mission, and that is to benefit everyday life with robotics, or through robotics. And just kind of hearing that, hit a bell inside of me, and been super passionate about Nuro ever since. So one of my more favorite things about working here is you actually get to see the progress, like out of the work that you put in. Even just day to day, you kind of get to reap the results, because you do see what happens from all that work that you've done beforehand. So I would say just the change of pace, it feels like a lot more brought up front in a startup. You got to be willing to adjust and adapt to many different obstacles that you'll run into. And that's kind of something I really enjoy doing, especially that I would say I learned pretty quickly, and it's something that I really enjoy, kind of just tackling a bunch of different challenges throughout the day. Do your research. Definitely use the tool like LinkedIn. Approach people that's already in the industry that you're willing to work on, and message them. You'd be surprised on how many people actually are willing to help you out.
Hi everyone, my name's Henderson. I have actually kind of a special connection because I actually graduated from Wilcox High School in 2014. Go Chargers, woo! Go Chargers. So a little bit about how I ended up at Nuro. Yeah, thanks. So how I ended up at Nuro, so after I graduated, I went to UC Berkeley, got a degree in mechanical engineering, and then I first started at a startup called Byton, which was just trying to make electric cars, and and my role there was a quality engineer on their electric powertrain system, so the battery, the high voltage, the electric motor, and the drivetrain systems. And I kind of bounced around a little after that, kind of took a side detour at Apple for about 18 months, which is kind of a weird detour in the automotive world. Then I came back here to Nuro, where I am now also a quality engineer, and I work primarily on the R3 bot, which you saw in the other room, and making sure that all the parts that do come in are made correctly to the right spec, and to make sure so that when we do assemble them in-house, that they're all correctly assembled together, because if you try to assemble I don't know, maybe like 10, 20, 30, or however many bots per day, per week, and if just one of your parts is off, then that definitely introduces a lot of delay. And so my job is to make sure that everything goes smoothly during the assembly process.
Not only is that a lot of delay, but a lot of expense as well. Mm-hmm. How much money might it cost if something's off, misaligned, and you building 1,000 bots with that thing that's misaligned?
Yep. And how did I actually end up here? Well, I think I wasn't really expecting to end up in automotive when I first graduated. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I was applying different jobs. The hiring manager of the first automotive company that reached out to me, he wanted to ask me about my work, and he was impressed with my experiences in high school and college of working in groups, being able to ask questions, being eager to learn and just absorb as much information as you can, because you won't ever know everything when you first start something. But if you can demonstrate to your peers, to your management, to anyone that you work with, that you're willing to listen, you're willing to be patient and listen and just put in the time it takes to learn something, and then figure out things on your own, and maybe you can one day propose your own way of doing things, then that is definitely a way to move forward and grow. And so that was one lesson that I've learned continuously that's really been helpful in my career getting here so far.
My name's Kayla Oliveri. I graduated from UC Davis this past December, so 2021. I got a degree in mechanical engineering, so this is actually my first job after college, and I'm the manufacturing technician and recently put onto the R3s as well. So I work with Henderson, and I'm more hands-on. We take things apart, put them back together, and right now those 3 bots are the first 3 of the new generation that we actually have. So it's very fun and interesting to learn about them. How I got here, I think when you guys go into the workforce, a big part about it, and in anything that is automotive related, or if you go into engineering and manufacturing, just your willingness to want to learn, and you're open to feedback, and your communication is good, because as long as you're able to learn from your peers, then you're going to be good.
Thank you very much. Maybe actually, Kayla, sticking with you for a second. How did you hear about Nuro as a company? Like you're going through graduating, you're going to be graduating soon. Did you apply to a lot of companies, only a few companies? How did Nuro get across your radar?
Yeah, so I applied to a lot of companies in my last semester or quarter of graduation. I knew I wanted to be in either an automotive company, but especially ones with like electric vehicles. And I actually applied a lot on LinkedIn, and that's how I learned about Nuro.
Is everyone here on LinkedIn?
If you're not on LinkedIn, yeah.
It's a great place to get started learning about other companies. I mean, I must have applied to 10 or 15 different companies before I started at Nuro as well. It's a great place to go to start building your network. I think Kayla and Henderson are both on LinkedIn, so I'm sure they would be happy to be your first connections on LinkedIn as well and stay in touch. I think that's something that's really exciting and useful in your future career development as you're looking at what jobs that are out there or trying to connect with people at companies. How about any questions from the folks here about things that you've seen so far today, or questions for Henderson or Kayla about how they got their jobs, what the interview process was like, what classes they took at school? And Henderson, maybe any courses from school that was maybe most influential in helping you get to here, or things you remember from school?
I'd say just any kind of project or coursework that involves like a lot of working with groups, group projects. I know it's really easy to complain about group projects. Oh, someone's not doing their job, blah blah blah. But part of the experience is that knowing how to deal with. Everyone works slightly differently. Some people are better on certain tasks. Some people need a little more encouragement on other tasks, and being able to understand and recognize, oh, this person, they're really good. They're not so great on, writing particular paragraphs, but they're really good at researching stuff on the internet and collecting notes. Then learning how to like assign people to do different tasks to get the job done is really important. So I'd say any kind of group project class that exposes you to like working with different personalities, different learning styles, and different ways of working, and how to deal with them, because you will always work with people for the rest of your life in the future. And so learning early how to work well with people and knowing how to resolve differences and knowing how to reach the end goal is most important.
I do not know. But again, like those 0 to 25 numbers, as well as like the EPA numbers as well, or like the mileage on the battery pack, is something that vehicles going up for sale have in there. Nuro building our own vehicles and then also running the delivery process is something new and very different that Nuro is making decisions about, rather than having to market the vehicle to someone that wants to buy it. And so while 0 to 60 time is really important, or to some folks as they're purchasing a vehicle, with Nuro not selling the vehicle, we don't have to worry about that. And so we can optimize the battery and the starting time for delivery services to keep that cost down as much as possible, rather than put all that power in how fast we can go. $20 an hour is the starting salary for that, and then as you go through and advance your role at Nuro, you expand that opportunity as well, including stock options at some point as well. So it's something that a lot of folks are pretty excited about as they do that. Now, you also, as our folks from De Anza mentioned, you don't need to wait until you have a De Anza certificate to start working at Nuro. We have hired on some interns who are going through the De Anza certificate program to work at Nuro, get those hands-on skills as they're doing the course curriculum as well.